A fearless skywalker dangles 150 meters above the Earth.
This guy is nearly suicidal.
A stunt motorcyclist braves a tunnel of flames as hot as 1,000 degrees.
This guy dies if he does one thing wrong.
And the Iceman swims in freezing waters unharmed.
This is not something that people can survive.
Whether fact, fakes, or flukes, we'll dissect these amazing web videos and break down the science behind them. Right now on Superhuman Science. In Kiev, Ukraine, an amateur daredevil walks atop a construction crane. More than 50 stories in the air.
I don't think I have a huge fear of heights, but after watching this, now I think I do.
You can tell he's done this so often, he was playing. He's not even being careful.
He calls himself Mustang Wanted. With no net, he swings on the crane like it's his personal playground. Higher up than the Great Pyramids. So how does Mustang Wanted do it? Our experts take a closer look at the science.
From a physics standpoint, you need to make sure that you have great stability with your balance. Right here, he's making sure to put one foot in front of the other, trying to make sure he stays balanced. That's why he put his arms out there to help with his center of mass. So it definitely takes a lot of being in tune with your body.
This crane cowboy has also fine-tuned his senses.
3 of these senses interact to let you know how you're balancing and how well you're doing while you're trying to balance.
First, your eyes. That's why it's harder to stand still on one foot with your eyes closed. Also, your inner ear, known as the vestibular system, which helps with gravity and equilibrium. And what's called proprioception, or a sixth sense, which helps your body's spatial orientation, so your left hand knows what your right hand is doing.
The problem is all 3 of these can be interrupted by fear and anxiety. So if he was afraid or nervous, he would be able to balance less well.
So what's Mustang Wanted's secret?
He almost never looks down. So even when you're standing still, you're naturally swaying back and forth a tiny bit so you can gauge how far objects are from each other. But when the object you're looking at is the ground 50 stories down, your body has to sway a lot to figure out where exactly it is. So what he does is he just does not look at the ground.
Also, the level of chemicals in the brain is ever-changing and can be different in each person.
There are chemicals in the brain that we call neurotransmitters.
Chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and adrenaline can act together to help warn people to be scared.
When they get scared, some of these neurotransmitters in their brain get expressed at higher levels. One of the side effects of dopamine is it gives you a little bit of a high, a little bit of excitement. He's got some adrenaline, he likes the rush of energy that comes with it.
Whether this gives you the chills or thrills, you'll still watch to see if he slips and falls. And for that, Mustang Wanted Skywalk gets our vote for Superhuman.
So people have survived falls from, say, a couple to 4 stories.
I don't know too many people who can fall from 50 stories onto pavement and be okay.
You only make that mistake once.
From a high-flying Skywalker, we turn to a motorcycle stunt rider cranking up the heat. This is American motorcycle daredevil Clint Ewing. He once set a world record driving through a 60-meter tunnel of fire.
When I completed the first tunnel of fire, it was just the best feeling in the world.
Now he's decided to try it again.
I just told myself I didn't want to be the one-hit wonder.
Only this time he'll plunge into a 110-meter tunnel of fire, about the length of a football pitch.
This is death-defying.
Going through a tunnel of fire on a motorcycle, that's just insane.
This is madness. This is going to make him incinerate practically on the spot.
As long as you can see and as long as you can feel the bike, it's perfectly fine.
So, is this possible? How can someone survive this? Our experts aim to find out.
He has to cover a distance of about 100 meters. If he were going 50 kilometers per hour, then that would take him about 7.2 seconds to actually make it through.
The heat is on. The flames are expected to hit over 1,000 scorching degrees Celsius.
He's in a tunnel that is quadruple the heat of the highest setting on your kitchen oven.
No matter how short a period of time he would be in the tunnel, he would sustain some kind of burn if he did not have the protective armor, really, that he has on.
Somewhere north of 500 degrees, your skin can burn. Burn as in sustain a fire that will eventually burn through you.
Clint's team has taken precautions, including pre-testing a special carbon-based fireproof layer he'll be wearing. He'll also wear a fire-retardant suit, Kevlar pants, a double-shielded helmet, and a water-absorbent polymer layer on his skin and gloves.
They'll put a special water-filled gel onto the skin to keep at bay the heat.
The searing heat also means no oxygen. The fire sucks it all out of the tunnel.
If he breathes that hot air, his lungs, his trachea, all of that can sustain significant burn injury.
We can only inhale air up to about 76 degrees Celsius before it singes our insides. That's about what it takes to roast a chicken.
My breathing through the tunnel of fire is basically non-existent. You're basically holding your breath for as long as possible and keeping your heart rate down and not opening that mouth or nose.
But even holding your breath for about 8 seconds can spell trouble.
A person can certainly hold their breath a couple of seconds. Longer than that, you start to experience feelings of disorientation, dizziness, lightheadedness.
And keeping your senses intact in a tunnel of fire is critical.
As the fire intensifies and it gets more and more blurry, then all of that sort of fades.
You don't know which way is right and left because all you see is fire.
This guy dies if he does one thing wrong.
As Clint roars into the tunnel to break the world record, everything changes.
My tunnel soon turned into an inferno instead of a tunnel. As the fire intensifies, it gets more and more blurry. I can't see a foot in front of me. The oxygen's gone. The bike shut off with lack of oxygen. It just threw me all off.
Clint is down.
He's on fire! He must have crashed! He's on fire!
He's in flames, but he's alive. First responders on hand rush in to rescue him.
Right now I have 2nd to 3rd degree burns on my hands, and I'm looking at 1st to 2nd on the back.
This is truly a death-defying effort, but we can't quite call Clint's attempt superhuman. Maybe next time.
If you're not willing to deal with the lows, then you don't deserve the highs. Aim high.
Coming up next, we turn from a fiery motorcycle stunt to an Iceman's plunge into freezing water. And still ahead, a contortionist who stretches anatomy beyond the imagination. And a martial arts monk who uses mind over matter to combat pain. In Iceland, a Netherlands daredevil sits on icebergs in sub-zero temperatures that would kill most people.
I want to get everything out of life.
Wim Hof, known as the Iceman, can plunge into icy water that is beyond frigid and still survive. Our scientists examine how this is possible.
Short, finite periods spent in cold water, ice water, is perfectly tolerable by the human body. However, prolonged exposure can lead to hypothermia and even death.
He clearly tolerates it for much longer than anyone I know, and it's very impressive.
Iceman has spent years adapting his body to resist the cold.
The more you expose yourself to the cold, you're basically hardening your body to that. You're making your body used to it.
It's phenomenal that this guy has acclimatized himself.
He's conditioned his body for it.
Usually the body shivers in response to cold, and that's actually an adaptation to being able to deal with cold. But he doesn't shiver because he doesn't seem to be in any distress.
When you are dropped into intense cold, completely submerged in that, your motor sensory skills just fail. And yet the fact that this guy gets from point A to point B and seems completely lucid, it's pretty impressive.
Iceman claims that through meditation, he can keep his body temperature near a normal 37 degrees Celsius, even in icy extremes.
He is able to meditate before he goes into the water. He stays calm. He knows exactly what to expect. His heart rate is down.
It almost seems like he's going through a ritual to get ready to jump into the water.
Because this is not something that many people can survive.
Iceman prepares his body by decreasing his breathing rate, heart rate, blood pressure, and metabolism. The goal is to trick his hypothalamus, the part of the brain that serves as the body's thermostat, into thinking there's nothing unusual going on.
When he gets into this cold, icy lake, his brain is telling his body to be okay with being in the icy lake.
Iceman has set several world records for icy endurance. But to him, this is no mere stunt. It's preventative medicine to keep away disease.
This natural method really is effective. It works. It works deeply within.
He feels strongly that his methods can lead to a healthier, longer life.
He thinks that exposure to the cold can cure all kinds of diseases, and there's something to that.
Cold water like this does stimulate your immune system.
Scientists have shown elevated white blood cell counts in people who repeatedly expose themselves to the cold.
However, that does not mean that jumping into cold water like this will necessarily cure diseases.
What science knows for sure is that the Iceman has a super high tolerance for cold, which makes him superhuman.
It's stunning. Think about your reaction when the cold water hits you without warning in the shower.
I think he has some innate ability to resist the ice, but he also has trained himself very well.
Truly incredible. His ability to withstand these temperatures is almost superhuman.
Now we move from pools of ice to a stunt that stretches the human body to new lengths. And later, voices that can shatter glass. This British performer seems like many others at first. Then she twists and bends the limits of human anatomy.
I just wince in pain by looking at her, but I'm just amazed that she can actually do this.
It's a little bit freakish. This isn't something we would expect to be able to do.
Watching Leilani Franco, nicknamed Lucky, really makes you wonder if she has the same 206 bones as the rest of us.
Our bodies are meant to bend certain ways. Contortionists can make them bend in ways they're not meant to bend.
So how does this seemingly superhuman woman bend herself into these inhuman positions?
Scientists have actually taken contortionists and put them inside MRI machines to look at their backs just to make sure there's nothing supernatural going on here, and they have normal backs.
But Leilani's talent is above normal. Her strength and conditioning help her remain so limber.
She has amazing control of her center of mass and also the amount of tension in her muscle.
She's not only stretching her back, but also engaging all the muscles in her body in order to recognize which ones do I need to flex, which ones do I actually need to relax, which ones do I need to lengthen to get into some of these positions.
And this level of muscle control and flexibility takes work.
It helps to start early when things like your bones are still very flexible, your ligaments are still very flexible.
She's been able to train herself and adapt her body to all of that, something that the rest of us would not be able to do just from a cold start.
But the key reason why Leilani can talk and turn like no one else could be a gift from Mother Nature.
She had to have been born with a special set of genetics to actually allow her joints to function that way.
People use the term double jointed, but that's not really the right term because nobody has a double joint. It's more that people can bend things backward that most people can't bend backwards.
She has extra elasticity in her joints and ligaments, allowing her to be extra flexible.
You have the stretchy, soft tissue called collagen. And in some cases, that's just more bendable in some people than others.
Collagen is like your body's glue, and Leilani's might be naturally thicker, making her more elastic.
Collagen has something called crimp, which has to do with the waviness of the material that makes it up. That crimp, if you picture it as waves, when you stretch that collagen, it stretches and stretches until it becomes flat. And then it's rigid and you can't bend it anymore. So in some people, they have much higher or differently shaped waves and they're able to stretch it more and more and more. If these people discover this about themselves, then they perhaps go on to become contortionists.
Lucky Lalani has set several world records for her contortionist moves. All the more reason why we call her flexibility superhuman.
I mean, this is someone you don't want to play Twister against.
Now we shift from a natural human pretzel to a nurtured monk of steel in China. Imagine being squished between the blades of 3 swords and a bed of nails. And then getting struck with a sledgehammer.
It's a pretty incredible stunt.
Most people have a difficult time tolerating placement of an IV, let alone laying on a bed of nails and having a block chopped on top of them.
China's Shaolin Kung Fu warriors are world-renowned for their amazing skills. They also make pain endurance an art form. That is, if you can believe what you see.
It never crossed my mind this was perhaps a hoaxed video. It was shot in front of a live audience.
I think the bed of nails and the knives, I think that is very legitimate.
The monk uses deep meditation to block the pain. But there may be more to this stunt than the power of the mind. So how do they do it? With a little science. First, a monk lies down on 3 large sword blades.
He lays very carefully on all 3 knives at once.
And this is what prevents him from being cut by any one sword. It's because he's distributed his body weight across 3 different points of contact.
On top of him, a double-sided bed of nails. Then another monk.
In order to make sure that this trick works and the monks don't become pincushions, you have to make sure that you lay down all of yourself at the same time on the bed of nails.
It looks like torture, but in fact the bed of nails offers hundreds of points of contact with the monks' bodies. And each nail supports an equal amount of weight.
I actually have laid on a bed of nails, and if you're put down on it right, it doesn't actually hurt that much. You might feel a bit of a prickling sensation, but it doesn't hurt.
The hammer too might be less painful than it appears.
So if you back this up right here, he uses just enough force to break that block without following through and putting any additional pressure on those nails.
What's interesting is that the placement of the second body helps absorb the shock and impact of that hammer. That sort of insulation is what prevents the person on the bottom from actually being cut.
So as they bring on the knives, nails and hammers and play through the pain, are these monks super kung fu masters or superhuman?
When you look at this in the big picture, it's not so superhuman, but pretty classic super science.
From a master of meditation, we switch to some earth-shattering voices. Finally, we look at some mind-boggling videos. That can leave your ears ringing and your glasses popping. These videos test the age-old jokes about singers hitting ear-splitting notes that can break glass.
And that's proof that it's not a trick.
So are these real or just a ruse?
They look like they're fake because it's someone controlling something that they're not touching. But these don't seem to be fake. These can be real.
While there are doctored videos out there, this trick is possible, at least for a few very special singers.
It's your own personal science experiment with sound and glass and structural stability.
So, exactly how can a human voice shatter glass?
What we usually think of is that it takes a high soprano voice to shatter glass, and that's not necessarily the case.
You need to find the resonant frequency of the glass first, which is hard.
The resonant frequency is the natural point of vibration where the sound waves cause any object to shake, shudder, and even crack.
If you look down on the glass, you'd see it starting to oscillate a little bit. And you could see the circle at the top of the glass becoming an oval and more elongated as it just kind of wobbled and warped, and then oscillate just enough that it's not something the glass can withstand. And then there it goes.
As hard as it is to find that frequency to break glass, it's even harder to sustain it.
It takes consistent force that hits the resonant frequency of that material in order to break it.
But as tough as it sounds to shatter glass by singing to it, a few tips help.
What a lot of these people have done is put something small and lightweight inside the glass, like a straw, plastic drinking straw, so that when they go, well, they'll know when they hit the right resonant frequency, because you'll see that straw start to leap around as the glass is changing shape.
Also, not just any glass will shatter from you trying to sing to it.
You'll see people using like a thin wine glass or a thin goblet as opposed to, say, a tumbler or a drinking glass. And that's because in the thin wine glass or the goblet, there's less glass there. And so it's actually easier to set up the resonant frequency and to make it be structurally unsound and to break apart.
Plus, resonant frequency won't work with just any object.
The issue is that the average thing, like a chair, it's really spongy. And so it's not one frequency that's going to break that chair. We're not going to hit a resonant frequency of a chair because it is not a solid material.
So while we can't say that singing to your glass is superhuman, it's still worth mentioning as a skill that only a few of us can handle.